Going out on top amid a flurry of gambling rumors.
Amid a flurry of accusations and counter-accusations by the nations representing the machine consortium, the president has ordered a special executive inquiry.
It's a flurry of deliveries.
Flurry of excitement over here at the White House.
This was a major step forward in the struggle for racial justice and helped begin a flurry of bold and heroic actions known as the Civil Rights Movement.
Flurry of buyouts in the corporate world.
Well, number 3 had a brief flurry of success last night.
Amid a flurry of accusations and counter-accusations.
I just got a flurry of fucking emails.
And that does coincide with this flurry of activity.
I must say that this tiny little flurry activity...
That's a flurry of activity that
After hours of little to no action, within the past couple minutes we have witnessed a flurry of activity up there on the 20th floor of the Chicago Administration Building.
And the rich flurry of our almost romance.
That flurry of passion was a goodbye fuck.
Well, my system's been a flurry of activity.
Or end up in a bukkake with a pot of dolphins.
He was working on bridging the gap between man and machine.
We're gonna surround them like a pot of dolphins.
For you is designed to bridge the gap between you all.
I'm just trying to bridge the gap between what just happened.
Begin to bridge the gap between science and religion.
They'll bridge the gap.
Bridging the gap between ancient tradition.
Harnessing can bridge the gap between worlds.
So he's bridging the gap between the races.
That will bridge the gap in the shield.
Let's see how this is bridging the gap.
I've had to learn Cantonese to bridge the gap.
I'd like to strike the right balance of sexy but pious.
Strike a balance between culture and fun. Somehow.
This strikes the perfect balance between the two.
We need to strike a balance between your
eyes pale in comparison to the enormity of what I've done.
We can create havoc that's going to make Burning Khan just pale by comparison.
Pales in comparison to their well-being.
Collection pales in comparison to mine.
My skills pale in comparison to the magic.
Young lady, these pale in comparison to your beauty.
Sometimes the expected simply pales in comparison to the unexpected.
In comparison to the hoots that you had.
I'm sure that would pale in comparison to the actual experience.
Way beyond.
Our budgetary process makes us pale in comparison.
Today. So these racist housing and transportation policies, they put homeownership out of reach for millions of Black Americans, creating this yawning generational wealth gap that exists today.
Eyes pale in comparison to the enormity of what I've done.
We hear much these days about the yawning gap in our country between the rich and the poor, the haves and the have-nots.
This strike seems to be catching fire because it mirrors the discontent a lot of workers feel about this yawning wage gap between the top and the bottom.
Secondarily.
And yet there is a yawning gap between wealthier nations and countries like the Democratic Republic of Congo, where just 0.2% of the population was fully vaccinated. Thanks, Chris. Let me just ask a quick follow-up on that. Do you we've seen this yawning gap in income and wealth.
Anything silly? It's just the mind doing its normal work, adjusting to yet another yawning gap between the way we would want things to be and the horrid way they are.
Always at these things, there is a sense of a yawning gap between what happens in there and the outside world, but now it feels like the Grand Canyon.